My name is Jack Edward, and today I'm looking at the brand new, now kickstarting, up-and-coming, already incredible Sundered Isles supplement for Ironsworn, taking you on a quick tour of its content and showing you the 5 biggest things to look for and what I think the best thing this thing has on offer. This is Ironsworn Starforged Sundered Isles. This is the part where I'd play the Pirates of the Caribbean Hans Zimmer theme if I had thousands of dollars in licensing fees. You might be saying, Jack, how did you get a physical copy of the book? I thought the print run was kickstarting as of what, today? Yeah, well, I took the early access PDF and I printed it, like 250 pages, and I hand spiral bound it myself is what I did, because I just wanted to get it in my hands and have something to work with and show you guys. The real copy will look way more beautiful. This is the Starforged reference guide, right? The sci-fi equivalent, and it's a beautiful product. And so this is also, by the way, not a sponsored video. I know I don't make many videos like this, but I just made this because it's something that I'm interested in. And because it's not sponsored, I get to say sort of what I don't like about it, too, which is there are very few things, but, I'm persnickety. So I don't know if you agree with me, but I find that in tabletop role-playing games, pirate adventures and, like, nautical adventures, that genre, are cracking, like, an impossible code. Not doing, like, nautical-themed D&D, but truly, like, pirate fantasy sandbox. I've tried it in D&D, but it requires this, like, very funny level of absolute freedom that is just very difficult to GM for, especially in a traditional game. I think you could probably go back and find an old Reddit comment of mine saying something like, hot take, I don't think the pirate genre is suited for TTRPGs as a medium at all, despite, like, 7th Sea existing and Ghosts of Saltmarsh, which I've run. I've run Ghosts of Saltmarsh and all that. But, and you'll excuse, by the way, 2 things, my little bit of a cough I have, a little bit of nasaliness, and the wind and the rain and the subway outside. But when I realized that Shawn Tomkin was going to be taking his hit GM-less system for Ironsworn and Starforged, which is mainly designed around like solo or co-op play, and that he would be adapting it into a nautical supplement, I thought, okay, like, this might be it. Like, this might be the thing that cracks the nautical, pirate-themed tabletop role-playing game code. Okay, I'm going to close that window. One, two, testing, 1, 2, 1, 2. So I've read it through, and I've listened to some early live plays, and I did some character generation play testing, and played a bunch of Starforged, and I'm going to take us through a couple of things that I really like in here, but I just want to start out by saying this. The boy done did it. Shawn Tomkin strikes again. Homie can do no wrong. This is an awesome product. I believe for the first time I'm seeing something pay off on the promise of nautical, seafaring, rebellious, truly open, sandboxy tabletop role-playing game and group storytelling. So before I do that, I'm going to take you on a quick history of, if you don't understand Ironsworn, I'm not going to, like, teach the whole game here. It's very cool. There's a lot of people who do that really well. There's great online tutorials. The Bad Spot is a channel that has a lot of great content on how to play Ironsworn. But let's just go through, like, a quick history of Ironsworn and how we got here, right? Very briefly. 2018, 2019, Shawn Tomkin puts out Ironsworn and its reference guide. This right here is a totally free game combining things like Powered by the Apocalypse, games like Dungeon World, with influences from systems like Fate, to create something totally optimized for solo and co-op play. It's GMable, too. I really want to try that sometime soon. It's like guided mode. Side note, I also have like a blog post I'll link below about how I think these are some of the most brilliantly sort of like written and laid out rulebooks I've really ever read. but it's not a tabletop role-playing game with solo play tacked on. It is generated from the ground up to be a solo system. And I think since then has become the gold standard for games like that. So in 2009, it wins the gold ENnie for best free game. So it's built around a certain style of fiction, Viking-y, Norse settings, the Iron Lands, shamans, Bronze Age technology, classic dark fantasy, maybe think John Gwynne novels. And people are asking, wow, I want to do more with this. Like, I want to do classic dungeon delving with this. Fast forward, a couple years later, Ironsworn Delve gets written, and it's the classic Ironsworn system with dungeon delving rules attached. And what does he do? He kills it again. He wins the Silver ENnie for Best RPG supplement at the 2020 ENnies. Meanwhile, people start hacking Ironsworn to death and creating all sorts of great content. Like there's Iron Valley, which is like Ironsworn, but for Stardew Valley and Harvest Moon. There's Elegy. Oh, wait, I've got it over here. Where's Elegy? Where's my copy of Elegy? Where did I put that? Oh, it's right over here. Oh, snap. I'm walking away from my desk. There's Elegy. Elegy is like vampire Ironsworn, modern vampire Ironsworn, if you're into like World of Darkness stuff. And sort of alongside Tana Pigeon, who wrote Mythic Game Master Emulator. Now I'm going to grab that book. Where is it? Mythic Game Master Emulator. Oh, God. The library's gotten too crazy. Mythic Game Master Emulator over here, which is sort of, it's a Mythic GME is a way to sort of, this is a guidebook on how to turn any TTRPG into a solo game. Tana Pigeon and then Shawn Tomkin sort of become the two greats in writing solo games, in my opinion. Shawn Tomkin gets brought on to write Strider Mode, which is the solo rules for solo role-playing in the One Ring RPG. Free League, I think, hired him to do their Dragonbane stuff. He's doing the Moria supplement. So, bringing us forward and forward. I thought this was going to be a shorter history. 2002, after an enormous Kickstarter, Tomkin combines the lessons he's learned from Ironsworn and Delve, right? Refines the rules and launches a hit Kickstarter for Ironsworn Starforged, which is sci-fi Ironsworn. And this thing is, it's just incredible, frankly. Sort of, a lot of people think it captures sort of modern Star Wars style role play. Frontier, lone heroes, knights on the rim of cold space, sort of genre almost better than any Star Wars role-playing games do. I think this plus, what's it called, Scum and Villainy are sort of run contenders for top sci-fi gold standard role-playing games right now. So with Ironsworn games, you don't really need the full rule book on you at all times. Usually what you need is this. You need this reference guide. The reference guide has all of the oracles you need. It has all of the random generation tables, quick starts of the rules summary if you need that, and a guide to all of the moves. So as a stretch goal on this sci-fi setting, we had what we've now got in hand, which is the hit sci-fi version of Ironsworn. Boom. For those of you who have been following along this whole time, science fiction Ironsworn is actually already very close, right? Now we've got Ironsworn with shipbuilding rules, right? With crew, and a cold frontier to explore in your vessel. Why not reskin that, add a couple of rules, and turn it into a nautical setting. And it took him a while to get there, but now we've got Sundered Isles. And boy, oh boy, is it great. So that's the history, right? So just this week, it was fully funded in its first hour or so. I bet it's up to like 100,000 by now. I should pull up I'm not going to worry about pulling up the Kickstarter, but it was at like a couple hours, it's 50,000 or whatever. It's doing great. It's fully funded. He's already written almost all of it, and I highly recommend going and grabbing this if it matches what you're looking for. So now let's do a proper preview. And again, this isn't a whole rewrite of the game from the ground up. It is the science fiction version of the game. Take those core rules and throw on a beautiful, I mean, buff that thing up and give it a beautiful new life as a seafaring game. Gosh, I need a sip of water before I go into this next part, because this next part is it. It's the preview. Now, I'm going to pull out 5, maybe 6 things I really love here, but what I'm not going to go into detail is the obvious thing. And what's obvious is the things I would call the reskin, right? So there's some light touch-ups to the moves. There's a new Truths workbook, right? In order to build the world in Ironsworn, you choose your truths, and so you need to pick, like, what remains of the lost past? What is the state of technology, right? How are people in places connected? Obviously, like, in the sci-fi version, you had one that was about, like, artificial intelligence. We don't need that anymore. We need to know about pirates, right? This is reskins. There's new assets, right? There's the cards that build your character. Obviously, we don't need... your ship doesn't need snub fighters, it needs a diving bell. So we've got new asset cards. We've also got some new play principles, which are really cool too, right? We are playing rebels. There's a political overtone to this version of the game. So a lot of things change from stars to sea, and there's an addition of hold as an asset. You know, you had 3, you had a supply track before. Oh, here's some ships. Look at that, right? Obviously, you had ship and crew. Now you've got a hold track as well. Health, spirit, supply. Now your ship has its own place to put treasure and stuff if you're trading or if you're plundering. But that is... I'm going to set that stuff aside. I'm not going to go into depth on that, because if you have seen any system adopted for a new setting, you understand how some basic reskinning works and looks. And there's hundreds of pages of that I could get into. Instead, I'm going to now, at long last, how long have I been going? God, over 10 minutes. I am going to get into what I really think is key and core here, which is, I'll call it 6 things. The first is that this is the first major, these are the things that surprised me. The big surprises that made me go like, oh, this isn't just a reskin. This has some stuff in here that is fucking cool, man. So the first is this, and it really kind of blew my mind, which is that it isn't one genre of piracy, it's 3. Seafaring, skyfaring, and starfaring, right? So... seafaring, you've got your classic nautical setting. You've got Master and Commander, Horatio Hornblower, 7th Sea, Pirate Board, Pirates of the Caribbean, even some Indiana Jones thing, right? This is the obvious. When you see this, you know what you're getting into, right? And check this out. I had no idea he'd be doing this. Skyfaring. We've got Jim Butcher's Cinder Spire series, Final Fantasy IX, Mortal Engines, Steampunk, Airship Badassery, Skies of Arcadia. So... this supplement is also taking you with that, like, cool airborne, such an underexplored... I mean, I love this genre, and I think it is not handled nearly enough. I love seeing new content for, you know, so for here we've got coastal boats and mighty seagoing ships, bustling ports, inland villages, ruins nestled in jungles, right? That's obvious, right? Now we've got ships tethered to port. We've got, storm clouds unleashing lightning strikes and blasts of thunder, waterfalls falling from broad cliff sides. We've got colliding islands in the sky scattering small fragments. That is just so fun. There's a really cool, oh god, I forget his name. I'm going to link him in the doobly-doo down below. There's a cool actual play doing Skyfaring Realm right now, which is really neat. And finally, the third... so this is really neat. The third realm is Starfaring. So, Spelljammer, Treasure Planet. Now, this is not a genre that I like a lot, but I think that there are 2 things about the Starfaring genre that are very cool. The first is that there is a lot of... if you like Spelljammer... what have I got over here? Okay, here I'm grabbing more books off the shelf. I'm stepping away, and I'm grabbing... the latest 5th edition Spelljammer. Okay, I'm coming back to the table. If you are into Spelljammer as a setting, right? Maybe this set disappointed you. There are a lot of touchstones, like auto gnomes or whatever. And the cool thing is Shawn Tomkin has built in the asset deck. If you want to play an auto gnome, there is a there's a construct asset you can play as a construct, right? There is still support for all sorts of that weird those weird genre conventions established throughout the ages from Spelljammer. And so that's really, if you want to just grab those 5th edition books and you want to use them as a world building guide and just go through that Spelljammer stuff, maybe you were disappointed by the 5th edition books, this is a great opportunity to revisit that with a new mechanical framework. So that's one of the things I think is really neat about the fact that we've got these 3, honestly, dude, again, I don't have that deep connection to Spelljammer, but I have no idea, dude. I have no idea if I'd rather play Seafaring or Skyfaring. It's just it's so tight that both of these are supported here. So that's one of the coolest things I think is true about this book. The next thing, so that's number 1. That's 3 exciting settings in one. The next thing I want to point out here is Cinder and Wraith. Cinder and Wraith. Where'd you guys go? I gotta find it. My color printing here is absolutely terrible. Here it is. Cinder and Wraith. Shawn Tomkin builds in some pretty cool stuff into the sort of setting. You can adapt Ironsworn to whatever setting you like, but Tomkin builds in pretty cool stuff that you can take or leave. And at first, when I saw that the setting for Sundered Isles had two moons, Cinder and Wraith. Wraith, a sort of cold, blue-looking moon, and Cinder, a sort of red. Cinder is the red of cooling flames. Wraith is silver blue, right? And when I first saw that, I was like, meh, I don't know. I probably won't use that sort of implied setting stuff that I could discard. But he built in this cool mechanic that I am just in love with and I think is awesome. And I'll tell you what it is. In Ironsworn, the system uses 2d10, so you roll your d6. This is like what you use to do your actions, and then you're also rolling the difficulty. So in Ironsworn, I'll take you through it. If you know the dice mechanic, a mixed success in Ironsworn is also called a weak hit. Is where your action die beats one of them, but not both of them. And the result is you get a little good and you get a little bad. And you have to sort of, every time you get a weak hit, one of the great challenges of Ironsworn is interpreting what to do with that weak hit. So here's the cool thing he's done. He says, when you sit down to play Sundered Isles, take a die. I've got them here. I bought them online. Crystal Maggie. These are pretty cool, right? Assign a die to Wraith and assign a die to Cinder. And Wraith has a character of, where is it here? The Wraith is cool, careful, mysterious, cunning, and unearthly. And Cinder is hot, aggressive, passionate, resolute, and physical. So let's just say I rolled them and I was trying to compel an NPC to do something, right? Nope, that didn't work. I need to get a mixed success here. Perfect. So the 3 beat Cinder, but not Wraith. So Wraith has introduced a complication to my success. So if I'm trying to, say, compel an NPC, I can use the themes behind the die to inform how I interpret my mixed success. So normally I'm like, ugh, I've got to introduce a complication. What's the complication? Instead of just having a totally blank slate, I can say, well, Wraith is the one I failed to convince here. So what does Wraith have to say about this NPC? Wraith is cool, careful, mysterious, cunning, unearthly. Maybe I compel this NPC, but they're very nonplussed. They'll go along with me, but in the back of their mind, they're scheming. Whereas if it had been reversed, right? If this had been a 1 and this had been a 7, I compel the NPC and they respond passionately, and maybe too passionately. Maybe I've compelled them to become fanatical, or maybe they'll do what I say, but they're fucking pissed, right? Now they're angry and they're demanding towards me, and I have to talk them down off of a ledge or give them some. You understand what I mean? Is that for me, I love this thematic introduction. One, because it brings this setting right into the mechanics, right? I feel like I've got the moons of my world in my hand. That's so fucking cool. But the other thing I sort of like is that I personally, if you know me, right, I think of the oracles and the interpretation of the dice sort of mystically in general, right? Ironsworn's always had this feeling of like, we're casting the bones. We're leaving it to fate. We're trying to read the dice to see what they have to inspire us with, and to feel like we've got the moons and the dice have different attitudes, and it's you know, where before we just had fate, now we have two mystical sisters who are governing our destiny. I think that's fucking awesome. So that's Cinder and Wraith. That's a neat thing. The next thing I want to talk about, so that's number 2. We've got 3 cool settings. We've got Cinder and Wraith. The next thing I want to bring up is the introduction of a mechanic here called the Cursed Die. This has gotten a lot of play. I don't love this as much as other people do, but Shawn Tomkin's introduced something called the Cursed Die. So so normally I'm rolling these, right? Every once in a while, we'll go look at an oracle. And the oracle will have a skull and crossbones on it. I've got one right below. Boom. Character goals. Character detail. This is even easier so that you can see what I'm saying. Sometimes you meet an NPC and you'll roll in the character details table. Boom. There's a skull, which means I have the option of adding the Cursed Die. This isn't in the other Ironsworns, right? The Cursed Die, I've got this one here. It's really cool. It's got a skull on it, also by Crystal Maggie. And the skull is on 10. Normally you add... I'm going to roll an oracle. So I need a D100, right? This is a D100 table. And I'm rolling a character detail, so it's a 55. So normally I would just roll the character detail. I get a 55. What's this character like? Insightful. Okay, great. So I meet this NPC. It's an insightful NPC. But now, let's just say, since I see the skull, I'm thinking, you know what? That's asking me if I want to use the Cursed Die. I'm going to add it. And let's just say it. Come on, baby. Give me a Cursed Die. Give me a cursed result. Give me the skull. Don't embarrass me. It's a 1. Let's just say it was a 10. Let's just say I roll that random skull in here, and it comes up a cursed result. Now I refer to the cursed character details, and where it was a 55, it's a jinxed NPC. Or sometimes you see a weapon, a trademark weapon, and it's a 92, but let's just say I'm never going to naturally roll a curse. Let's just say it's a cursed 92, and the trademark weapon, instead of being stink pot grenades, which are already pretty fanciful, are now the cursed weapon detail is whispering irresistible commands. So the grenades whisper commands at you. Cursed first looks, right? Cursed settlement details. So I think the Cursed Die is kind of neat, right? Curses, paganism, superstition, and doom are huge elements of nautical fiction. The more you reflect on it, beyond like Pirates of the Caribbean, movies like The Lighthouse, The Terror, books like The Terror, Moby Dick, cruel and capricious fate is an element. And so but here's where I get the drawback, right? I'm gonna give my caution here. I don't love the Cursed Die personally, because I look at some of those tables, and for me personally, I think they're just a little too gonzo. I think they're a little too intensely paranormal. Like, character backgrounds are, like, pretty cool, right? Like, you're creating a character. I was creating a character once, and I was like, oh, he's the scion of a noble house, and then I rolled the Cursed Die, and I got the Cursed, and I was like, oh, no, he was, like, brought back to life as, like, a revenant? He's like a walking, shambling undead man? And I know it's, like, I know it's like totally crazy. Like, yeah, it's very like Jon Snow, but it's more. I remember watching the first Pirates of the Caribbean movie and seeing some paranormal stuff and being like, that's pretty cool. And then I remember, even as a teenager, I saw subsequent Pirates movies and I was like, okay, now everybody's like a walking barnacle man. I hate this shit. Like, just, you know, maybe I'm a little mundane, maybe I'm a little too quotidian, but while the cursed eye is really cool, and I think a lot of people should review those tables before introducing them, it's a little gonzo for my taste. But for you, maybe you think it is absolutely sweet. Okay, so the next thing I want to look at is Naval Encounters. Another thing I was a little weary of when I first saw it is this is one of the toughest things to get right in an RPG about pirates, right, is Naval Encounters. And I saw, when I opened this up, I was like, oh no, Shawn Tomkin, what are you doing? You wrote a whole, like, subsystem for naval combat? Now I've just got to break out a whole new set of rules? And it turns out that's not what he did at all. Instead, what he did was he created a flow chart that takes the mechanics we already love and know and familiar with, right? Like, simply like asking the Oracle a couple of simple questions about like what we see, using sometimes a single move, like face danger or secure an advantage, to like set up the approach, creating using enter the fray in order to do engagement, setting a tension clock in order to set up enemy goals, right? At no point, this is what I love, at no point do we have to, like, set up an enemy health bar and do damage to it, necessarily. This is something that changed going from Ironsworn to Starforged, and Ironsworn was much more like, okay, the dragon has, like, a track that's this long and we're doing it harm, where in Ironsworn, there was a huge philosophical shift, and the philosophical shift was, like, every combat is like a challenge on a track, and the question we're asking is more interesting than how much damage does the monster take, right? And so what's cool is it takes the same approach to nautical combat. It gives us a flow chart to say, like, hey, we don't need to create a new subsystem, or we don't need to, like, stat out cannons and shit like that. We can just, like, do what we normally do with scene challenges and choosing like a challenge rank for engagement objectives. This is really cool. It's like, we all know about being, if you've played Ironsworn, when in control or when in a bad spot. This tells you, like, okay, cool, like, you want to gain ground, you can set sails, you can maneuver on foot, it's just inspiration on how to use the rules that are already in place to manage a huge, cool, epic scene, a boarding phase. So I love the way that this is handled. I'm not going to go through it point by point, because I feel like I would have to read you the whole thing, but I feel like that's great. I roll an enemy ship on the horizon, and I can just go like, sweet, I'm going through the process, and this is resolving narratively and beautifully. So bravo for handling naval encounters. Because, by the way, when I ran in D&D 5e, my first ever, like, ship's deck fight scene, I remember thinking, this was so cool, and I never want to do it again. Like, I just kind of, like, I'm already burnt out on doing this shit, and I don't think I'll feel that way with Ironsworn. So, 2 more things to go. Ready? Oh, I'm going to have 6. Ready? Number 5 is, and this is fun, this is something that means a lot to me, a fleshed out faction system. I'm super into faction play. I think that I've been reading, like, Root, the Root role-playing game, which does, like, politics beautifully. And I think what Tomkin does here with factions strikes a perfect balance. I think you can get too faction heavy. Another creator who I think has a lot of integrity is Kevin Crawford, who did Stars Without Number, and Worlds Without Number and Cities Without Number. And those games have, like, these faction systems that are like these giant, it's like you're almost playing a second RPG using all of your factions. And I think that's too heavy. My sweet spot is basically what's done in Mouse Ritter, right? Take a name, give your faction a motivation, and give them a couple projects to make progress on, and you're good. And I think that right here, he's set this up perfectly. This isn't in yet, this faction influence grid. This is going to be in the play kit, which I haven't seen. But there is a simple procedure in here for creating some factions. There's some great oracles. Where's a couple of them? Page, what have we got here? Oh, these are sample factions, but there's beautiful faction oracles on Where are you, baby? I knew you were here somewhere. There you are. Society, right? You can generate, like, what are some notable events that shaped a society? What are its touchstones? If you're going to create an organization, what are some of its secrets and what are some of its methods? I love that, you know? Simple faction generation. And I think that this clearly Sundered Isles looks very political, like, as opposed to Ironsworn, which is classic dark fantasy, and Starforged, which is much more frontier, sort of almost, God, it's almost like sci-fi. I hesitate to say sci-fi western. This is a game, Sundered Isles is clearly a game about rebels. You know, it's clearly a game about empires and secret organizations and that sort of thing, right? And so having your factions is just a little bit more vital than when you are a monster slayer taking bounties, right? This seems like a game where political interplay is going to mean a lot, and so I really appreciate that it's here and it's not too complicated. I also like that the tables that they've offered here for different sample societies and organizations and empires are very evocative and also really tell you what kind of setting you're working with. So I loved that. And the last thing I'm going to mention, which is really cool, and before my voice dies out entirely, is... Did I lose my little bookmark? I'm a mess today. Interludes, which I think are really cool. Let's find where I put Interludes. 48. Page 48. God, this is such a big... It's going to be such a big book. This is something that I felt so lacking from a lot of solo games, really, which is... Look at this. Need a break from the perils of the Isles? An interlude is a low-stakes, character-focused downtime scene. It's your chance to deepen your character's personality, interest, and background so you can, like, take in the view, join in a song, partake in a drinking contest, do some training, share a moment of intimacy, right? And I love this because they help you give you some structure around introducing role-playing beats. A lot of times when I was playing Starforged, I'd have these characters aboard a ship, and I'd be like, man, this would be a great time to have, like, just some time for them to chill, but there's really no structure around that. So I feel like I'm just, like, especially if the two characters are in a fight, I feel like I'm just, like, grabbing my NPCs and, like, making my dollies kiss. Like, I feel like I'm forcing it. It feels silly to say, but it's true. And so now that it's the teensiest bit fleshed out, it feels like there's really some juice here, and as it says here, it's a really good opportunity to do moves like hearten or compel, and so I really love that this is here, especially since overland travel, when it's nautical, is a little bit more, how should I put it, nautical overland travel isn't as milestone based in such a visual and in a fantasy overland travel, we go to Weathertop, and then we go to Rivendell. And so in nautical travel, sometimes you're just on open ocean, and you need other ways of pacing out travel. And so having changes, Master and Commander, a huge section of that movie is just like the wind stops and the guys are hot, and they think there's a curse on them. And that's an interlude, basically, or it's a weather change. And so it's cool to have other ways of breaking up the time than throwing monsters and throwing islands and land ahoy and oh shit, an enemy. And I appreciate that he's added new ways of breaking up the pacing. And that's it, man. Look, I think this book is incredibly rad. The one thing that immediately jumped out to me as something I didn't love was what Tomkin has done with monsters, and I'll tell you why. Page 58. So, like, Beasts of the Isles is really cool, and he's got all these great beasts to generate. I loved in Starforged, I loved the bestiary. It had, like, every monster had different versions. It had cool, like, drives and tactics. They felt like Dungeon World entries for monsters. From what I understand, I don't want to speak for Tomkin. I might be guessing here. From what I understand, that wasn't actually very popular. I'm like one of the few people who ever cared about that. And so he pared that down significantly, and we just have some evocative, language instead of full-on monster entries. I would have liked them to be more fleshed out, but there are plenty of Powered by the Apocalypse games and things like Dungeon World Bestiaries that'll do that for you. I'm sure people are not like me and don't need all of that stuff on the page. But that's a pretty minor complaint. I'm sure I'll run into some other stuff. Obviously, there's so much more coming in, like the play kit, and there's some entirely like missing oracles in here because I printed out basically what is a preview version of this book. But thank you for see the settlement name generator isn't even here yet, but it will be in the final project, which you should support. The link below. And also, if you're looking for other pirate games like and you don't like this particular thing, Pirate Borg is a Morkborg hack and is a very cool OSR game. If what you're looking for is much more like light and for groups, and you just want to like throw characters quickly together and have them die on the open seas, it's pretty cool. And then I think pretty soon Magpie Games is going to be launching the Kickstarter for Rapscallion, which is sick. And one of those games that's been kicking around a lot and has been played to a lot, but is finally going to get its own book. So you can go support those projects if you want. Leave any questions or comments you want in the comment section. I love subscriptions because I hate the algorithm, and subscribing is the way to get around the algorithm. Subscribe and then set your main page to subscription, not the for you algorithmic generation. Thanks to Shawn Tomkin for putting this together. Thanks for channels like The Bad Spot and the various other people who make great Ironsworn content. Thank you to everybody on the Discord too. There are all sorts of and the subreddit. Ironsworn has a great community around it, and I highly recommend giving it a shot. So that's all I've got for you today. My name is Jack Edward. This channel is usually called Play Material. This is a one-off video, and stick around because so much more is coming.